Hello, you're listening to Tony Slattery's Rambling Club, and you're most welcome.
Well, it's Friday, it's 5 to 5, and you're more than welcome, so do come on in to Tony Slattery's Rambling Club. Hello, my name is Paul Carmichael.
And I'm Allan.
Welcome to the Rambling Club Shed. We're going through some of Tony's old books. He's got so many books of just like 101 fascinating facts about things that aren't particularly fascinating, hasn't he, Al?
He has, and I particularly like this edition of Collins's perennial 1001 facts that absolutely aren't true for the schoolboy.
That's a fantastic book, isn't it? I remember he used to spend so often telling us these things that simply weren't entirely.
Yeah, I think he got a lot of them from his 1973 copy of Ripley's Believe It or Fuck Off.
There's probably something in there that would help, yeah, but, there's the door. Do you want to get the door?
That won't have my job as usual, is it?
Yeah, sorry.
I'll be the butler, fine. Hello, can I help you?
Hello, I've been invited along.
Oh, good to see you. Yes, you're from the pub, aren't you? It was about forming the quiz team.
That's exactly what it was.
That was a good bit of recollection for me. I must have laid off the vodka for a couple of days.
Excellent, well done. Well, you're more than welcome to come in, so please come in and take it. But hold on a moment, Al. Do you recognise this gentleman?
Vaguely, somewhere behind the spectacles, there's a face that seems familiar. Yes,
I think so. Would this by any chance be Mr. Paul Sinha?
It is, and you mentioned the spectacles. I always wear my spectacles now so that I don't get recognised by people.
Giving away a trade secret.
I learned it off a guy called Clark Kent.
Well, you're more than welcome to the Rambling Club. In terms of forming a pub team, Allan is essentially who I turn to if I want to know anything at all, which he always looks quite sheepish about, but he can rattle stuff off. But
He comes with a reputation.
he does indeed. But, Paul, what we were about to do, maybe you could put us to the test and see if we'd be any use to you in this pub quiz team. We were about to take our usual Friday afternoon ramble around the grounds of the village. Would you maybe like to come with us about see where we end up?
That's very much what my lifetime wish has been for a number of years now. I would love to go on this ramble.
That's absolutely what we wanted to hear. So, let's give the machine a whirl and see where we end up. Off we go.
Tony's enchanted bingo machine. A curious contraption of cogs, levers and glowing buttons that hums with ominous energy. This machine generates 3 completely random numbers. These numbers are fed directly into the Dewey Decimal System, the arcane reference system by which books and their contents are categorized. In this way, the bingo machine conjures from thin air a topic of conversation so enthralling, so wildly unexpected, that it leaves the members of the Rambling Club both bewildered and vaguely excited. And thus, another evening is saved from the brink of boredom, thanks to Tony's marvellous, possibly haunted and entirely inexplicable bingo machine.
Well, here we are in the great outdoors with our guest president, Mr. Paul Sinha, ready for our first ramble. And the numbers selected by the machine for our first ramble are
1, 9, 2.
192, 192. And that means that the first subject is Philosophy of British Isles. Philosophy of British Isles. Do we have any particular philosophy of our own, nationally speaking?
Well, the nation would like to think so, because it sees itself as an elite and unique institution separate from the rest of the world. And so that's got to come with a set of philosophies. But exactly what those philosophies are can be disagreed on and agreed on ad infinitum, because the reality is we're just as divided, we're just as... I think the main one is simply stand on the right-hand side of the escalator or you will be deported.
Right. As someone who commuted for 20 years, yes, this is a policy I can get behind. But I think, but we do have an awful lot of things which you could say, well, maybe not petty, but certainly we have a bit of an obsession with queues. I do.
Mm-hmm.
So is that part of maybe our British philosophy? It's disappointing, isn't it? Other people get Derrida and we get queuing. But
I mean, I think there's a richer world to be discussing queuing than Derrida at this stage. You could go down an awful lot of blind alleys with Derrida. But the thing about queuing is it gives the British something to have a chip on their shoulder about. And that's why the British love queuing, because it allows them to be judgmental about the behaviour of other people. And that in itself is an incredibly British thing to be.
It's the in-group, out-group mentality in action, isn't it? The in-group are the people who are queuing properly, and the out-group are the people who push it, and they're going in the Lancer.
this seems to be something that we all feel very strongly about, this idea.
And it's terrifying because say you're queuing for something for a long time, such as overnight for tickets to Wimbledon.
All for the Queen's funeral coffin thing.
But I chose my one because that's something I'd actually do. You're terrified to leave the queue because you don't know what chaos could happen when you come back and go, remember me? I got here on time. I was in this queue, but I really, 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 really needed to go to the toilet. So I went to the toilet, and now I'm back, and there's 100 people staring at you as though you encapsulated the character of Satan with your every word and move. It's quite terrifying to not do the wrong thing.
How would you look at that person if you were actually in the queue, they've nipped off?
I'm quite laid back.
Right.
I wouldn't be, unless they were absolutely taking the piss, I wouldn't be that bothered.
You'd hope the bloke behind you would save your spot, wouldn't you? It's the admirable thing to do.
So I suppose, is that part of our philosophy as well, that idea of fair play, or is that something that maybe we used to have? Or?
Our philosophy is to believe that we have fair play. To believe that is a uniquely British thing. I mean, cricket, for example. So many people. I love cricket, but I love cricket with all its flaws. I don't love cricket going, this is an impeccable game which has no flaws and no bad manners, and anything that isn't cricket is negative. Cricket is a multifaceted and fascinating experience on a number of levels, many of which are to do with misbehaviour and not just good behaviour. That's, for me, what cricket is. But the traditional English view of cricket is its joy is that it's 22 people who are there to play the game as fairly as possible. And that's not true. That hasn't been. It was the English that introduced bodyline famously in the 1930s. So they couldn't find any other way to get Don Bradman out. So they decided to bowl short pitch turn and bowling to try and injure the Australian batsman. The English created that. So the English / the British are obsessed with the idea that they invented fair play, but they're certainly not going to analyse the truth of that statement too deeply.
There's a story, isn't there, that W.G. Grace once knocked the bails off his own wicket with his bat and replaced them and turned to the umpire and said, "Strong wind today, umpire." And the umpire let him get away with it because he knew full well the crowd was there to see W.G. Grace bat.
Ah. So what's curious here, though, is, of course, we've got the actual subject is philosophy of the British Isles. Now, so that's ticking in a hell of a lot, isn't it?
I mean, everything from England to Summer Isle and the Wicker Man.
Yes.
And everything in between.
That's quite, which I would say is not entirely in line with my own personal philosophy, although I do empathise with Christopher Lee in some ways. But in terms of philosophy, when you're travelling, when you're on tour, is there a different spirit where you go? My wife's Scottish, for example. I think there's a very distinct Scottish spirit that is separate from the English identity.
Well, you'd hope so, given how much so many of them want independence. You'd hope there were good reasons for that, and those reasons were at least partly cultural. I'd hate to think the Scottish didn't have their own identity in that way.
Yes.
But I don't. It's not something that I concern myself when I'm touring as a comedian. I don't try and. I mean, I've recently recorded 2 episodes of Perfect Pub Quiz in air, and it's certainly true that there was a very different audience from the ones in Merthyr Tydfil and in Leicester and in Bradford. There was, but what they all had was a bunch of people in the audience that knew everything about their neighbourhood, about the general I mean, I asked a very difficult question in air. I asked a question about which I tried to lead them down the path by saying which famous poet who died very, very young and is considered one of the greatest poets in his country spent a year at school in the Ayrshire town of Irvine. And I expected someone to say Robbie Burns, and someone said it's Edgar Allan Poe. And I just kind of wanted to go, how the hell did you get there? And it turns out they knew that Edgar Allan Poe had spent a year at school in Irvine, in Ayrshire. So wherever I go recording the show, what I find is an audience who are incredibly knowledgeable about their neighbourhood and their cultural history.
We have that here because, of course, Birkenhead, the library has a monument to Wilfred Owen.
Oh, yes.
Who was not from here. He was from Ipswich, I want to say, but he moved to Birkenhead when he was 8, and Birkenhead nicked him. And he's been from Merseyside ever since.
It works the other way as well. There's a lot of people that won't accept John Bishop because he was born in Runcorn. So
To Cheshire.
it does work the other way.
Yeah. So, how are we seen from outside, do you think? Because obviously we've said about our spirit of fair play and all that sort of thing, but I wonder how we're seen from an external position.
It's kind of the thing Paul was saying about the nation's myth of self. A lot of nations have a myth of self. The American myth of self is that it's a benevolent colossus bestriding the globe, handing out democracy to people everywhere and not wading in and stealing all their oil. And the British myth of self was kind of formed, the modern one was kind of formed in World War II, and it's that we're a nation of defiant, plucky people who stand up to bullies and not the nation that bullied nearly the entire globe for good until old years.
And the truth of the matter is that all nations are both plucky and defiant and bullies. That's it, because we're all part of the human race. So the true answer is we're all the same, really. We're just subtle variations of each other. But the British particularly like to believe that's not the case, and that there's something uniquely wonderful about. I said in my radio show years ago, we call ourselves a United Kingdom. That's two things that we're not. And I'm very patriotic in the sense that I'm more than just somebody who's grateful to be born and brought up in this country. I celebrate the things that we're very good at. What I refuse to do is celebrate myths and misunderstandings and lies. And I don't think there's anything wrong at all. We'll go, yeah, we're a great country, but we also did this, and this. When I think of the greatness of this country, I think of John Logie Baird, Alexander Graham Bell, the Industrial Revolution, the incredible contribution to science of the 17th and 18th and 19th century from people born and educated in this country, is one of the things that I think of. But no one talks about it. On St George's Day, I always, in a contrarian way, go, Happy Shakespeare Day, everybody. Because for me, he's the most culturally significant Briton who's ever lived. And I would happily rejoice at a National Shakespeare Day on April the 23rd every year. Well, we don't seem to have one.
I remember my old A-level English teacher bemoaning this because he said in Dublin on Joyce's birthday, it's a huge, and people will just stand up in the middle of a pub and just go, I just thought I'd read this bit of, and the people sit and
I just thought I'd read this sentence, and 15 minutes later they still haven't read the complete sentences yet.
But they've had to do all the sound effects.
There's a real pride I've found when I worked over in Dublin. There's a real pride, not only in their writers, but also in theatre as well. I mean, it's felt for quite a while, certainly when it comes to smaller scale theatre in this country, you kind of got to drag people in a little bit. Whereas there, people go to the theatre for the love of it, and you can put on a complex Shakespeare, and so we're doing Hamlet set in the 80s, and they go, yep, and you've got a full house, and there's a love, and even the reviews come from a sort of a positive, they want you to do well, you know, it feels like they're behind you, which sometimes I've not found so much.
I think there's very much a tall poppy syndrome in this country, isn't there? I have the misfortune to read the comments section of any news story about the chase or a Facebook story about the chase. And the 6 chasers, it's amazing the variety pack of opinions that people have about us. And if I read 10,000 opinions, I might personally agree with maybe 5, because if these people don't know us, but they're happy to knock us down because we're on television and we think we're big, we're cleverer than we actually are. And it's
And there's a media literacy thing as well, though, isn't it? Because it's like the chasers aren't the chasers. Those are personas that play on the telly. It's not who you are.
I often get people saying, "Oh, not sure about Mark. He's a bit arrogant." And it's like I remember the number of times Mark has a producer in his ear going, "Can you big it up a bit? Can you be more bad?" So, it's not his fault.
He plays villain. It's a panto role, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like people used to give Kenneth Williams stick for taking over Just a Minute when he'd go off on a tangent and 5 minutes later he'd still be talking. Just a minute.
That's 4 minutes too long. I can understand why people would get angry.
It was pinned. It was David Hatch in the producer's booth going, "This is a bit flat. Ken, you need to liven it up."
Well, here we are, second location, second set of numbers, and those numbers are
4, 3, 4.
434. That's 434, and the subject is unassigned, which means we go to the top, which means we go to 400.
Oh, I thought unassigned was the topic. Being vague.
Well, we're going to go for 400, and 400 is language. Language.
Scarcely less vague.
It's scarcely less vague, indeed. So, Paul, do you speak any other languages?
I do.
Oh!
I speak Bengali.
Uh-huh.
Now, I speak Bengali enough to get by. It's my family's heritage. But when I go to India, everyone laughs in my face because I sound like a posh Englishman speaking Bengali. I imagine I sound to them like Officer Crabtree sounds in LOLO. So I can't get Bengali people to stop laughing at my accent at all. But I speak enough to get by, which is good. Because I love travelling. And I'm very ashamed of the fact that I don't speak European languages well enough to get by anywhere other than France. I can get by in France, and that's because I had a posh education. I studied French to a reasonably high degree, having enough to get by.
Yeah.
But me and Ollie, my husband, we went to Brazil last year, and it was a real struggle because we don't speak a word of Portuguese. We're in this incredible country, Brazil, with so much to admire and spectacular vistas, amazing food, remarkable culture. And we can't speak to a single person in the country at any level where they understand what it is we're asking or what it is that we'd like. And it's embarrassing. But at the same time, that is the nature of travel, isn't it? We can't all be polyglots. We don't have the time and the skill to be great polyglots. And so that's really one of the sort of sadnesses of international travel. Is it could be so much better.
I do get worried about being sort of the stereotypical Englishman pointing and saying things just louder. I try and avoid that. The one thing I've also avoided is getting an app, because you can just get apps that translate now on you and then you just hold your phone at somewhere. It's a little bit.
But it's useful. It is awkward and clumsy, but it often gets the job done.
It does, but I'm a Luddite in so many ways. And I don't know. I wouldn't be stood there with a book, I suppose. So probably I should just accept this. But how many languages? Oh, God, you'll know. How many languages are there in the world?
Oh, I certainly have no idea. I know the most is in Papua New Guinea.
Go on.
Papua New Guinea has about 800 languages that are spoken regularly in the country. And South Africa, I think, has the most official languages. What is it, 10? There might be 10 official languages in South Africa.
Oh, God.
India, of course, where my family are from, has an awful lot of regional languages. So even the national language of India, Hindi, is not spoken by everyone in India. But I don't know exactly how many languages there are in the world, but it's in the many, many thousands for sure.
it's hard to count as well, isn't it? Because you've got things like Chinese, which is one language, or at least it is if it's written down. But it's actually, when it's spoken, it's 23 mutually incomprehensible dialects. Because there was that famous, the brilliant thing when there was a period when the British Empire was spending nearly half its annual GDP on tea for China. And they realised that India had a perfect climate for growing tea. So they decided to plant tea in India. The problem was they didn't know how to grow it. Only the Chinese knew how to grow it, and they weren't telling because it was a huge part of their economy. So they sent a spy into China who did not speak a word of Chinese to find out how to grow tea. And he got away with it by just always pretending to be from the next province over, where they spoke a completely different version of the language. God. Yeah. Yeah, quite remarkable. Yeah.
I'll tell you something about Bengali you might be interested in. It's got this thing, like the French we have with tu and vous, of different sorts of second person. The verb that you use in the second person is different. And there's three. For each verb, there's three. There's neutral, there's implying seniority over the person, and there's implying that that person is senior to you. And if you get the wrong one, it's a real social faux pas. It's considered very, very rude indeed to use the wrong form of the verb. And so it's a bit of I get very nervous in case I say to one of my dad's elderly friends, I use the one that implies that I'm senior to them, and they'll be genuinely offended.
Is it based around the class structure, or is
No, it's essentially based around age,
right?
And implied seniority based on the working relationship between the two people. Yeah. So, somebody who's providing a service would use the respectful one to the person who's asking for the service. So it's not the caste system as such. Although I imagine those that take the caste system very seriously are very au fait with using the right form of the vowels. But that's not the origin of it. The practical origin is to make sure that you respect your elders. That's the driving force of it.
I'm reading Funeral Nights at the moment, which is about a group of Indian people going to a remote mountain to see a funeral ceremony that's only practiced by this remote tribe. And the word that seems to be used a lot is uncle, as a form of respectful address to any senior, any older male.
Yeah, all my dad's mates are uncles to me, apart from the women.
That's a Liverpool thing, isn't it? Which I had so many uncles.
Yeah.
None of whom I was related to. My Uncle Rum, my Uncle Arthur, all these people, I wasn't related to any one of them. It's fascinating that there's that commonality there.
But Yorkshire still has the familiar address, don't they? Because they still use thou and thy for close friends and acquaintances, where you'd use you for somebody you didn't really know so well.
Yeah. Somebody from Lancashire.
That'd be that bastard.
So, languages. Are they something that we actually need as a society, do you think? Are they an integral part of making us who we are? The fact that we do have those differences. I think that was Esperanto that attempt to create a language some time ago. But language is one of those things, almost like what we were talking before about those philosophies of the country, which are necessary, aren't they, for our identity?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring out Esperanto, because I never really have read into why it never took off. I'm not aware of what it was about Esperanto that meant it just never took off. I think there was a small amount of take-up in some European countries. But
there's a passage in one of Bill Bryson's books about languages where he talks about Esperanto, and he suggests there are basically two reasons why it didn't take off. The first one being that although it claimed to be kind of very obviously etymologically derived from English, the etymology wasn't actually that clear. So you couldn't kind of second guess what you were saying very easily. And the second one simply being that nobody was a native speaker of it, and it was much easier for a language that had lots of native speakers like English to take over as a lingua franca rather than everybody start learning a new language from scratch.
What was the reason behind it? Does anyone know why it was suddenly decided that we needed this shared language to be created?
I presume because the 19th century was a time of big international conflict, and it was very much in the spirit of diplomacy and for strengthening the bonds between countries that have been at war with each other.
Sort of like the League of Nations,
Yeah.
with a similar success.
Yes.
Or
Language is of interest to me as well because I take part in international quizzing as a concept. So we have tournaments where people from nations who don't have English as a first language often sit the quiz in English. And they are incredible people. There's a guy called Ronnie Swiggers who's Belgian, who's won twice I've seen him win a quiz that was entirely in English. And it's like, how are you doing that?
Oh, yeah. I remember reading an interview once with a German businessman who he was talking about business in the EU, and he said, if I and a French businessman and an Italian businessman and a Swiss businessman sit down at a table, we speak English because it puts us all at an equal disadvantage. Which I thought was a very good thing someone saying is second language.
I do remember going for gold, thinking of what you were saying there, Paul, and the fact that you've had all of these people from all over Europe answering in their second language. I'm thinking they must just be such intelligent people, and then realising that, no, basically everybody in Europe can speak English and feeling a little bit ashamed about that.
It's a remarkable thing to watch. Well, again, we come back to that idea that the British are smug enough to think that they're the best. We're not. We're up there.
Yeah.
But we've got no reason to consider ourselves unique.
No. Can any country claim that? To have a real uniqueness, do you think? Obviously, if you've got somewhere like North Central Ireland where nobody can go, there's going to be a uniqueness there. But
North Korea.
North Korea, I suppose.
Japan's probably good. Well, I think Japan is probably the most notable example of there being very little linguistic, socio-cultural diversity within the country compared to other major economic superpowers. But when we say, do we need language, I think this podcast would struggle without it. I really feel.
If you, who was it who wrote On the Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind? Because he argued that consciousness was
Theory of Six.
Yeah, it was his second autobiography, wasn't it? The argument there was that consciousness was secondary to language. You needed language before you could form conscious thought. And the argument he was making was that there'd basically been a massive crisis about 4,000 years ago, which was when the gods stopped speaking to humanity. And the reason was that up to that point, we hadn't recognised that we had internal monologues. We assumed that the voices in our heads were literally voices from outside, ghosts and demons and things talking to us. And when we became aware that consciousness is layered, we stopped having revelations. I think.
I'll tell you who's very grateful for language. Rowan Atkinson. Because it was because of language that the world needed Mr. Bean. They needed a comedy show that broke through the barrier of language. And I can remember the first time I sat on an aeroplane and that came the days when you couldn't choose your own entertainment. It was a film up on the screen. And I remember them showing Mr. Bean and the whole plane just erupting in laughter throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if something can break through and be funny without the use of language, that's amazing. Because I used to do a lot of gigs in Europe. And it's really tough. It's much easier for me to do gigs, let's say, in the Middle East, where the expats understand linguistic puns in the English language, than sitting in Amsterdam or Berlin or Madrid, where the audience are going, "No, your dog has no nose. So how does he smell terrible? What? They don't get English language puns instinctively, and so." The comedians that do well on the continent are ones that tell stories or do impressions or rather than do linguistic jokes. I remember a long time ago, Jimmy Carr telling me he basically died in the Netherlands because they just didn't get his jokes. But he was relatively new at the time. I'm sure they get his jokes down. But I remember him saying it's just a different experience.
If only Carl Sagan had known that the universal language wasn't mathematics, it was slapstick. Maybe that's what SpaceX are doing now.
Maybe. Well, here we are, our third and final location, our third set of numbers, and the numbers selected for us are
3, 4, 2.
342, 342. And that means the subject is constitutional and administrative law. Constitutional and administrative law. Right. Alan, any ideas what this? Alan's very good on law.
Well, I did.
Did you put this one in then?
I've been fiddling with the balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did do a module in constitutional law and I did my degree, actually, yeah. The mistake people make in this country is saying Britain doesn't have a constitution because it's not written down. Every country has a constitution. The constitution is just the set of rules that tell you how the country runs. What Britain has is not even an unwritten constitution because all our constitutions are written down. What we've got is an uncodified constitution because it's not all written down in one press. So some of it goes all the way back to Magna Carta. Some of it is quite recent, like the Parliament Act of 1911, which is the dodgiest piece of legislation there's ever been. That's the Act of Parliament that says that after 3 passes through the House of Lords, the Commons can overrule the Lords. They couldn't get it through the Lords, so they had to use the provisions of the legislation to pass the legislation. So it's cheating. It's definitely iffy though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really is. Constitutional, because people are always shouting these days. If I say, for example, suggest on social media that maybe I don't think Brexit was an entirely good thing, people do have a thing these days where they use the word traitor an awful lot. They're very dramatically using the word traitor. Does that have any legal meaning these days at all?
Well, I mean, that's criminal law, not constitutional law. Treachery, sedition are crimes against the state.
Right.
Which the state defines, obviously. So again, there are plenty of opportunity for cheating there. But I don't even know if treason is still... I know that treason was one of the 3 crimes that was still punishable by death until Tony Blair's government.
That isn't setting fire to a dockyard?
Yeah, arson in the Royal Dockyards and piracy on the high seas were the other 2.
Wow. I was watching a conversation about this on an excellent show called Below Deck, where they were discussing the option of piracy on the high seas, and they decided against it on the grounds that it might be punishable by death. One of the more dramatic episodes of Below Deck, and thus far the only one devoted to constitutional law.
I mean, legally speaking, obviously we all try and live within it, but have there ever been times when you've been tempted not to? I remember the poll tax riots. I was far too young to join it, but I remember being quite, inspired by them. But then there was... Now, what was the law that was brought in the 90s that basically limited social gatherings and you could only have 4 or 5 people? And it was basically because of the rave culture that built up. And so it was the right to protest, picket and party. I remember marching for that one, but being terribly, terribly drunk. And MTV were live and they came along to try just to do a vox pump, and it was just a live thing. It was just arsehole. So I'd probably put the whole movement back. And sometime.
The fun thing about the law about raves is that it legally defined music. Well, it was legally defined as a series of repetitive sounds. So, legally speaking, using a jackhammer is playing a musical instrument.
Right.
It's one of those... Yeah.
Don't tell Bjork. Yeah, thank you.
She'll do.
So Steve Reicher's music, but on the other hand, if someone's quite more experimental and not repetitive, then presumably...
If it doesn't have a beat, it's not music. Which is odd. So a lot of classical music isn't...
Yeah. Couldn't really be said to have a beat, particularly. Okay.
It's not that the law is full of those fudges. I mean, the ones everybody learns when they do criminal law is the case of the Crown versus Brown, which is from...
Is it a poem?
Yeah, that's right. It was the judge was Lord Justice Seuss. It was it was about sadomasochism, and specifically sadomasochism.
Oh, the Bolton one.
Sorry?
That was the Bolton thing. It was,
Oh, go on. What was it?
it was a particularly what's the word I'm looking for here? Intense legal case involving 7 or 8 people from Bolton who were getting a lot of pleasure from causing a lot of pain to each other.
Oh.
But all entirely consensual.
Right. I mean, seriously, it wasn't a bit of light spanking. It was nails through the. It was.
Yes, the one everyone remembers.
It was properly grim stuff, and part of the issue was that some of the men involved were very young. They were in their early 20s, which at the time was only just over the age of consent for homosexual relationships. And the case law that came out of that was that you cannot consent to being injured. Which sounds like it makes sense until you start thinking, well, how does surgery work? What about playing rugby? You know.
Doing the reality show The Jump, which caused a number of injuries at the time. Ill-prepared celebrities going down ski slopes. It's a real recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Eddie the Gladwood's glued to the screen. It's not so fucking easy, is it, Gladwood Pods?
Look, have either of you two ever had that thing of thinking that law is bloody ridiculous and it shouldn't be there, and either wanting to take action maybe to help it to be repealed or whatever?
Yes, but I just can't remember which ones. But certainly, you know, all laws, not all laws, but so much of the legal system has an evolutionary path, and laws get dropped and consigned to the anachronistic dustbin of history. There's a lot of laws we're now like you mentioned. To me, it's still remarkable that we talk about two-tier justice now. Right? The fact that homosexuality was only decriminalised in 1967, and before then, you couldn't have had a more clear version of two-tier justice, where fundamentally, if you were famous or rich, you could have a homosexual relation with anyone you liked, and it was absolutely fine. And if you weren't, you were in court.
Certainly in 1990, was it 92 in Northern Ireland? I think it was
Something like that.
Something insane.
Yeah. And then I remember the law was altered in 1997. Up until 1997, legally it was impossible to have raped your wife. Consent was assumed. So,
And again, that was Parliament, that was case law. That was the case of the Crown versus R, which brought into English law an existing Scottish precedent which said that rape extended to marital relationships. Before that, it was a holdover from the days when women were technically property.
What about ridiculous laws? There must be an awful lot still on statute books, surely.
Thatcher repealed a whole raft of them. If you ever read a thing that says, a pregnant woman can have to take a police leave, how much to urinate in, something like that. There was a whole raft of those laws that were antique on the books that Thatcher's government repealed.
You can't have a podcast longer than 60 minutes without advertising.
Absolutely, yes. That is the very true.
Important cornerstone of constitutional law.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Is the one about being able to drive sheep over a bridge in Chester if you're Welsh or something? Is that true?
There tends to be kind of, when people have the freedom of a city or something like that, there tend to be ancient rights attached to it that nobody pays any attention to anymore because it's a ceremonial thing, but they would have come with that in the old days. I think maybe the one you're thinking about with the Welsh thing is that there's a myth that it's legal to shoot a Welshman with a bow and arrow after dark.
That's it.
Inside the walls of Chester.
Yes.
Which would come as a surprise to any lawyer who's heard of the Homicide Act.
I thought there was an asterisk at the end of the Homicide Act, so...
The Welsh.
Well, here we are in an extra special location with our guest president, Paul Sinha, and an extra special set of numbers. And the numbers that we have are
8, 4, 843.
843. 843. French fiction? Anyone?
French fiction.
French fiction. Okay.
Where do we start? Well, start by saying I was amused the other day to hear Tintin described as a graphic novel in a quiz that I was real. Because the word graphic novel is such a modern term. I was amused to see it being applied retrospectively, and probably correctly. It's graphic and it's a novel.
So
But that's my sort of level of French fiction. I grew up with Tintin, and I'm sorry to discover that Hergé was a rancid racist.
and Belgian, so not even French.
In the French language.
French language.
Yeah, that's weird. So it's strange. Who was it I read about this week? Hans Christian Andersen. Apparently, he was a right tit.
Oh, there's a brilliant story about that. Charles Dickens.
Yeah. We had to stay with it.
For 5 weeks. Yeah. And apparently he was horrible. He made the kids pick up after him. He was terrible, apparently. And when he left, Dickens had a pokerwork sign made for the room he'd stayed in, but said, Hans Christian Andersen stayed here for 5 weeks, which to the family seemed like ages.
Amazing.
It went outside into the yard because he'd had a bad review sent to her, and he just went out into the yard and howled while the children stared at us. That's after he'd been there for weeks. 5 weeks with this man.
Oh,
That's an awful lot. It's got nothing to do with French drama at all. Even
French fiction.
French fiction. French fiction. French fiction.
I'm trying to think what's the interesting facts I know about French fiction. One of those that Molière died. Did he not die during a production of it?
Yep.
One of his plays, and it might have been the hypochondriac.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah. Yeah, French. Well, I mean, we've found ourselves talking about the Marquis de Sade a fair few times when we got to French fiction, which possibly shows more about our minds, I suppose, or anything else. But Chateau Valion. Oh my God!
isn't he the bad guy in Trial of Time?
No. Chateau Valion was a French super soap that they showed on Channel 4 in about 1991, and it looked a bit like Riders in soft focus, but then it was dubbed, and it just didn't work at all because the English had to be just said so quickly. So you had to all these people looking beautiful and relaxed with incredibly clipped received pronunciation coming out of their mouths to do with business. I loved that. Absolutely nothing to do with anything apart from whatever's French. But Chateau Valion, I remember thinking, God, I wish we'd get more like that imported into this country. And now we get lots of Skindy Noir and stuff. That's all good. And I don't mean good. I mean crap.
Yeah.
Honest, sort of like badly made television. I miss it. But Chateau Valion, which had a theme tune called Peace and Glory. Christ, it was sub-Eurovision. I recommend everybody look for Chateau Valion.
Well, French fiction rather shows how wide the topic of French fiction is. But it doesn't have to be literature. Has anyone seen the Michael Haneke film Hidden, set in Paris? No?
No, I haven't.
It's like a man who gets mysterious messages that allude to an ominous past in his life. And I went to watch it, and they revealed it in a twist at the end, and I didn't understand it. You have to watch it like 5 times to work out what they've revealed in the thing. There's a 5-minute shot at the end of just some people leaving a school, and somehow they've left the answer. And I went to see the film because Time Out magazine gave it 6 stars out of 5 for the first time in history of Time Out magazine, and I didn't understand it. I still don't understand. Nobody's explained the ending to me. No, and I'm still angry about it. And it's French language fiction, so it counts. Even though it's Michael Haneke, who's Austrian, but it was.
No, I find with lovely new wave films shot in the 60s in Paris, and it's always just people smoking an awful lot. I don't understand them at all. I love them, and I find them incredibly relaxing. My wife says it's just because you like women smoking, but you disagree with that. That's not. But anyway, but to get those films, and they seem to be about nothing, but they sort of like sum up the spirit in that. You know, in the 60s, it's just, you can almost touch it.
And there has to be smoking, otherwise it doesn't count.
There has to be smoking. There absolutely has to be smoking. Yeah.
If there's like some, if you're doing a noir detective thing, you've got to do it in black and white because it's part of the, yeah.
It's the language, isn't it? It's the pattern. It has to have that. Absolutely. But French cinema, I suppose, doesn't have to be indecipherable. Well, I can't let you choose it. Just choose it.
I call this Amelie. Amelie's lovely.
Oh, Amelie is a beautiful.
It's not just inaccessible sludge. French cinema. There's very accessible stuff. A film that I watched a long time ago called The Triplets de Belleville, an animated film of the Tour de France. That was absolutely amazing. I think it may have won a Best Animated Film Academy. Or the French they're very smug about how good they are at fiction, but they are very good at fiction. But the one that I never read and never seen, and it cost me so many points in quizzes, is Les Mis. I've never read the book. I've never seen the stage show. I've never seen the film.
Oh.
All I know about Les Mis is that Susan Boyle's got a cracking pair of lungs on her. When she sings "I Dream a Dream," I've really got to sit down and sort that out.
Is there a reason you've not watched that one in particular?
I just somehow managed to avoid it. So I think it's to do with age. Some people, Les Mis was a big thing during the time when they were growing up. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah. And in the film, is it, who is it who sings live? And you'd probably rather he didn't. Russell Crowe. Yeah.
The problem is he's playing Javert, which in the stage musical is the best part. Because he's the tragic figure. He's the policeman who doesn't understand that law and justice are two different things. Whereas a lot of the people who are ostensibly the good guys are just dull.
Ah, right, okay.
Javert and the comedy Thénardiers, who were the pack rats, the ones who scavenged around after all the people getting themselves killed for their high ideals, are good fun. I never read the book, but I enjoyed the musical. The only thing I know about Victor Hugo is that he was such a prolific user of prostitutes that when he died, the city of Paris had a day of mourning by all the brothels. They were closed down, the prostitutes wore black. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been on the stage. I've not seen Les Mis, but I've been on the stage with a group of students when they activated the stage mechanism and the barricades rolled out. I mean, it was bloody impressive, I've got to say. So, not something I've watched, but just to be there at that moment and the power of them rolling towards you, that was quite awe-inspiring. Or as one of my students shouted very loudly, "fucking hell," which summed up the moment, I suppose, for them.
Well, most theatres would dream of having an audience who were that engaged with what was going on stage that they completely forgot themselves and just went, "Fuck it up."
I think that. Yeah. So, French fiction. Any other thoughts on French fiction?
Alexander Dumas was black. That was a fact for you. I think his grandfather was from the Caribbean, or even indeed from Africa. I think Quasimodo. Do you know how he got his name?
No.
He was discovered on the Sunday after Easter, which was known as Quasimodo Sunday. That's how he got his name. That's why he has such an I don't know what Quasimodo actually means, but it's a word for the Sunday after Easter Sunday.
Wow.
That's another Victor Hugo, isn't it? Yeah. Horseback of luck. Yeah.
I believe that Victor Hugo's granddaughter won an Olympic gold in 1948 in the high jump, and then played the piano at the Royal Albert Hall the same night.
Go.
Wow.
She's
inherited his stamina.
It might not be his granddaughter, it might be his niece, but she was quite a talented character.
I hate her already.
Well, here we are, back in the shed. Our rambles for today are ended. And Paul Sinha, thank you so much for rambling with us today. Have you enjoyed your ramble?
Not really, no, of course it. It's been It's been a genuine pleasure and an unusual pleasure. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Really, thank you. And thank you to everyone for listening at home. And we hope that you enjoyed this week's meeting of the Rambling Club.
The club meets every Friday, but if you'd like to get in touch in the meantime, here's how you can find your fellow members.
Tony's official website is at www.tonyslattery.com, and you can get in touch on the contact form on that website.
We're on Twitter, sadly, at Slattery Live. Please feel free to use the hashtag TSRC to discuss this week's topics, which you won't. You never do.
I have a cam loitering hunt, but at Paul Carmichael V. But I can also be found on Blue Sky as Cam at Slattery Live.
Yes, Tony also has a good old-fashioned Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/VTonySlattery.
And he's on Instagram as well, at Tony_Slattery_official.
I feel quite humbled that he's busier on the social media than I am.
Speaking of which, how can we find you, Paul, on social media, the guest president?
Oh, guest president. I don't know. I didn't get.
I shouldn't accuse you, dear. I shouldn't have just said is at paulsinha.bsky.sable.
I'm on Blue Sky somewhere. So if you can't find me there, we shouldn't be friends anyway.
And if people want to join the Rambling Club for themselves, Paul, how do they do that?
Why would they after this? However,
Yeah.
what they can do is they can head to www.patreon.com/Slattery Live. The club's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can hear episodes 4 weeks in advance. You can see all sorts of photographs. There's all sorts of behind-the-scenes bits and pieces. So go over to www.patreon.com/Slattery Live, and you can claim your club badges and ID card. Have a look.
Yes. And while you're at it, why not go to wherever you get your podcasts? If you've enjoyed listening to us talking about languages, maybe you could leave us 5 stars or a lovely review, and then you'd really be speaking our language. I'm from the 70s.
Or as the French say, 5 stars.
That's...
Oh, and we will be back for another ramble next Friday. We hope that you'll join us again. But in the meantime, it's a goodbye from myself, Paul Carmichael. It's a goodbye from my colleague, Mr. Allan.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from our very special guest president, Paul Sinha.
I resign.
You have been listening to Tony Slattery's Rambling Club with our special guest president, Paul Sinha. He was accompanied by Stephen Fry as the voice of the bingo machine. Acting President Sinha was assisted by Paul Carmichael and Allan. The music was composed and performed by Michael Livesley and Andy Frizzle. Silly voices are by Michael Livesley, and the show's concept is by Paul Carmichael. Our producers are Stuart Morris and Allan Dybing, and the show's researchers is Sola Carmichael. The show's producers are Erica Lear and Mark Hutchinson, and the program was edited by Harry Carmichael. Our executive producer is Chris Castle, and the series executive producer is Mark Strickson. Tony Slattery's Rambling Club is a Fanfinidal production.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.